Well, good morning. Welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I'm your host, Mark Mitchell, preaching minister here at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined, as always, by Steve Fox, a minister for who knows how long. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. I hope everybody's getting along with this 5-degree temperature outside.
Yeah.
5 degrees one day and 50 the next day. Of course, I told you why that is, man.
No.
Well, Mother Nature's a woman, and she can't make up her mind. And I'm going to tell Kelly that you laughed at that.
Well, Steve, yeah.
No, Susie and I had a really good weekend. I started looking at my 10 grandkids and how much they're involved in sports, and we got swimming going on, and volleyball, and basketball, and baseball pretty soon, and soccer's pretty soon. And I look at all those kids being, doing something, and I hope I'm not arrogant, because this might happen down the road. One of my grandkids is going to get in trouble. I mean, they're going to
mess up somehow.
Be on drugs or mess up with alcohol, or just be a kid that's not. You can't pull him in and say, look, you got to sit down and change some stuff here. So
You enjoying it while you can?
I am. When I got 10 grandkids and they're not in trouble and they're playing sports, and I hear all these parents complain about sports, but you know what? I think sports is one of the great things in the world that deters our kids from drugs.
It is a huge influence as far as it can take a huge amount of emphasis off yourself and self-fulfillment. At the same time, sports can be just as dangerous as anything else, because if it becomes solely self-indulgent, you have a problem.
Well, when I was in high school,
your mic back.
When I was in high school, I had a lot of friends who drank and smoked and just didn't live a very good lifestyle. And but I didn't do that stuff for two reasons. First of all, my mom would have killed me. And secondly, when I was running track and cross country, I didn't want to, in wrestling, I didn't want any of that, anything that I did to take away from it was a mediocre career, but to take away from my career.
Oh, I can understand it. I spent myself quite a bit of time in the athletic world, and there was a tremendous amount of fulfillment, and anybody who's been involved in any kind of team sports, there's a camaraderie that you get in those kind of activities that teach you some huge, valuable life lessons. And it's akin to what can happen inside a church or any other organization, where you bond and build together as a group of individuals. God designed us so that we work better together than we do as individuals.
And Paul even writes that that kind of exercise and that kind of discipline,
it's beneficial.
It's good for you. It's
not life.
It's not, it's not the thing where you bet your life on, but it's good for you.
Yes, he said it has its benefits.
Yeah, it does.
And it does. And but we just don't. Anytime we take things out of perspective, that's when we get in trouble.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Well, for our listeners, hopefully you've kept up with what we're talking about and the basis of what we've been studying for the last couple weeks, and we may finish today. We'll just have to wait and see. Steve and I are capable of dragging one on now. But we've been talking about, is everything equal, and are there important things that are more relevant to our lives than other things? And we've had several different topics. I mean, we've had from Ephesians, where we talked about
imitating God.
Imitating God. Then we have 1 Corinthians 15, where we put the first importance on death, burial, and resurrection. Then we had John 13, and we're told to love like Christ, and our love is demonstrated for one another and in our obedience to God as a sign of Jesus and the difference he makes. And then last week we were in Galatians chapter 5, and you'll have to remind me what our discussion was from that verse.
Paul talks about circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing, but faith working through love. That's the important thing. Faith working through love. He uses the word counts. That's what counts.
Yes.
These people that were arguing about observing the Sabbath or circumcision or non-circumcision or how many holy days we're going to have, Paul says all that is nothing really compared to faith working through love. Faith working through love. And the thing that I like about what we're studying right now is it's not like we say not everything else in this Bible is not important, but there are degrees of importance. Yes.
There are, you and I both know that you can pick a lot of things in this Bible that it discusses, and there are some things that are just, they're absolutes, and then other things, they're important, might not take on the same importance as something else, but they still have value. It's much like when Moses brought down the law, he had the 10 biggies, and then he had explanation of how those 10 work in life.
Yeah.
In every other, when you draw them down into smaller detail. So, that's just the way things work. There are important things, then there are less important things, but they all fall under the umbrella, if you will.
There are all kinds of passages in the Bible, and I didn't write any of them down, but there are all kinds of passages in the Bible where God seems to indicate that there's a list of things that are important to him, things that he says are important, things that he says are a part of the heart, things that are like faith working through love. There are all kinds of true things in the Bible that don't even come close to having the same importance that those other things did. And so instead of somebody saying, well, you guys are rather obnoxious, you're speaking for God. We are speaking for God, but what we're talking about comes right from the scriptures that originated with God.
Yeah, today, Peter, and for all his, frailties and mistakes, he steps out on a limb and makes a pretty bold statement, if you will.
He goofed a lot of times, didn't he?
Yes, he did, but, what he shared, and I'm sure if others would have said, I don't know about that, Paul, or Peter, they would have said, you might be speaking for yourself now, Peter, but not for God. But let's hear what evidently God approved this from 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Whew. If we just abided by that one, above all, love each other deeply. Now, I know that we could take that and give that maybe to some extent a salvational context, but in the context of 1 Peter chapter 4, he begins this entire narrative with, don't live your life like everyone else lives their lives, where they chase after things that are relevant to the flesh. He goes through a list in there: debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, detestable idolatry. And they talks about reckless, wild living. Peter is very adamant in the fact that, I understand you're going to live your life. And there's going to be things that are going to seem like they're going to be okay. But Peter draws it all down. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins.
This is one of those passages where a lot of adult teachers would be teaching a class and just jump over those two ideas and just run away from it as fast as you can run away from it. For this is why the gospel was preached even to the dead, that though judged in the flesh like men, they might live in the spirit like God. This is why the gospel was preached even to the dead. I don't know exactly what that means. There's a couple other passages that talk about the 3 days during Jesus' burial that he actually did some work, even evangelistic work.
The people of Noah's time,
Yeah. And so instead of running away from that, we just ought to thank God that there was a time that the gospel was preached to dead people. I don't know exactly how it took place and when it happened.
I don't know what the context or what the end result was.
Well, I know what the black and white says. I know what the ink says.
Doesn't mean I understand it.
No. And then speaking of not understanding, if you go to the next verse, the end of all things is at hand. Oh man, I could stay there for about 3 hours if you'd like to do an extra program. What he's talking about in verse 7, where he says the end of all things is at hand, or it's close, is the fancy word for that is realized eschatology. Now, most people don't even know what eschatology means, bad enough, realized eschatology. But, you can go to heaven and not understand realized eschatology at all, but that's what he's talking about here. There was an event that was going to take place very, very soon, and he calls it the end of all things. Therefore, keep sane and sober for your prayers. And then the verse that you mentioned a while ago, above all, above everything else.
Yeah.
Hold unfailing your love for one another, since love covers a multitude of sins. Boy, there's that word that keeps cropping up all the time. Every time you see
important issue, love's there.
It's in there somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we seem to not truly grasp the condition of the heart and its expression of love. We automatically treat love as purely something goes on between a husband and a wife, or parent and a child, or between friends and things of that nature. In truth, you and I, whatever we love is whatever we chase after. Mm-hmm. We'll chase after it. We'll worship it. I mean, I knew some people who are absolute, and you and I admire the sports world, but I know some people who are absolute fanatics over sports teams, mm-hmm. over sports individuals.
It's at the top of their list. There
are people who are, all they care about is movie stars, or, they get in such a state of mind that it is one of the most important things to them. And that is the connotation of love that is more prevalent than we even talk about.
Jesus talked about people's treasures. There are all kinds of treasures, and he said that's where your heart is.
And he went on to say, you'll worship what you love.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You will worship what you love. And I know that's sort of in this context. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. John goes on to explain in 1 John that unless you love others, you can't really love God. Because he says, how can you love someone you've seen and say you love someone you haven't seen?
Yeah, I've had a lot of trouble with that verse, because I've seen a lot of people who are hard to love, and especially when they're going after you or your family.
Well, I always took it like this, that God looks down and he knows how much his real love, what it looks like. And there's people that mistreat him, who ignore him, are disobedient to him, disregard him, and yet he still loves them. You and I are called to be like Jesus, who in our John 13 verse said to us, love like I love, in which he loved everyone, even loved those who spat upon him, who whipped him beat him to within an inch of his life, crucified him, mocked him, denied him, whatever you want to put on there, he still loved them. John's understanding is there, it's easy to say you love God.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure you understand that the way you love others really defines how you love God.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's the Polaroid, if you will, of your love.
It's the snapshot of your love.
That's right.
We should put that in the Bible somewhere.
Yeah, boy. Too bad they didn't have cameras back then. But,
Well, in the verse that you mentioned, where Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, he's saying to them, you're supposed to be different. And then when people are around you, they'll know that you're different. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but that's part of the proof that we are following Christ, that we are his disciples. If I love you, you love me, and we love all the people in the church, and we love the people we come into daily contact with, that if we love, you're right. If I go around treating people like that in a very harmful way, I'm not proving my love for God at all. I'm proving exactly the opposite.
Actually, I'm demonstrating the world's philosophies, which Peter's gone through this whole thing in the first part here, 1 Peter 4. And you're right. You're not demonstrating any context of what the love of Christ is.
I've been around people who maybe were in difficult situations where I respected them greatly because other families would look at that man or look at that woman and say, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Now, I just wonder, it'd be interesting to know, not in an arrogant way, it'd be interesting to know, as you live your life every day, how many people are looking at you saying, he's different.
Yeah.
He's different than the other people.
Yeah, and it'd be a good thing.
Yeah. He's been in jail 3 times this week. He's
different. He's different.
He's a little different from the rest of us.
Because I've actually said, I've actually used that expression a time or two in my life. And it says, oh yeah, I know them. I said, yeah, I like them. They're different, but I like them.
Well, I had a preacher friend tell me one time, we were talking about a man that both of us knew, and he said, well, when you come to know him like I know him, you'll appreciate him like I appreciate him. Now
you don't know what to do with that.
Either direction, you can run with that as well.
Okay, does that mean you just soon walk over him or you pick him up?
Yeah, right.
And of course, the crazy part of 1 Peter chapter 4, and you and I haven't even touched on it, is how does love, that kind of love, cover a multitude of sins? Man, there's been a debate on that one, hasn't there?
Lots of times I've heard people talk about, well, what it sounds like is, if you treat people like that, then God will hear your prayers, and God will answer your prayers. He will cover a multitude of your sins. But he might just be saying, if you treat people like that, you're going to take away the wrath and the heartache and people going after each other.
Yeah, the sins that develop from hate and animosity toward one another. You're right. I mean, we don't really have a clarification on that particular context, but we do know, no matter which way Peter met it, it is still true in its deepest context.
Mhm.
When you love one another, I am convinced that you definitely have alleviated most of your sin problems. You know?
In that same context, this usually surprises, sometimes shocks people when you tell them that the word Christian is in the Bible 3 times.
Yeah.
And here's one of them where he says, rejoice in as far as you share Christ's suffering, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. If you're reproached for the name of Christ, you are blessed because of the Spirit of glory and of God who rests upon you. But let none of you suffer as a murderer or as a thief. Here we got the guy that's been in jail 4 times this month. None of you suffer as a murderer or a thief or a wrongdoer, a mischief maker. Yet if one suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but under that name let him glorify God. There's another part of the list. There is one name, and that name is supposed to be at the top of the list. And he says if you're going to glorify God, you glorify God through Christ.
And through your
his
actions.
Yes.
What was it? I heard, actually saw it on a sign out in front of a church. Well done is a lot better than well said. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that.
I've seen actions that are louder than words. I've seen that attributed to Lincoln. I don't know if he was the first one that said it or not,
but you know, it is an idea that is very prevalent. Jesus said, he told the Pharisees, with your lips you think you were perfect, but on the inside you're just dead bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
since I mentioned that a little while ago, a couple minutes ago, let me read verse 17. This is the last verse in that paragraph. And here's another indication of realized eschatology. I'm just going to throw it out and then run. You can take the rest of the class.
We need to get back on our topic, but go ahead.
For the time has come for judgment to begin with the household of God. There was a time in the first century when he says the judgment is to begin with the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? And then I've heard people say, if the righteous man is scarcely saved, where will the impious and sinner appear? I've heard people say, you're just going to squeeze through the door. You're just going to be, the word he uses is scarcely saved. Nobody is scarcely saved. It's like being pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not.
Yeah, you're saved or not.
You're saved or you're not saved. It's not like people, crawling through the door over here and crawling through a window over there. But something was happening, and they were supposed to be saved by their interest and by their occasion of loving the name that they were supposed to glorify God through.
Well, there is just so much that we don't fully get the context all the time.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure Peter, it's not like this isn't important for us to understand. It in a roundabout way, it's always a mindset. Grace, as Paul in the book of Romans says, you do not receive grace because of what you've done. Grace is a gift. Be thankful. In a roundabout way, it's the same thing Peter's saying. Hey, you're not getting there on your own merits.
Well, Peter is also saying that you may have to suffer for Christ to gain what you're trying to get.
Yeah.
And
well, that's an inevitable truth that is kind of become extremely unpopular in our Christian world. No, God's a God of giving you everything you want.
There's no judgment. There's no negative thing about it.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Perfect life.
And sometimes, I think all of us deal with this. We feel a little bit awkward or maybe uncomfortable with the fact that there are Christians in the world who suffer much more tremendously than we do. I mean, when you got people getting shot walking down the street because they go to a certain church, or somebody burns their church down, or whatever, their assembly hall, or whatever they call their assembly, they torch that. And that's persecution.
Yes.
You know, nobody's burned our church down for over a year now.
Yeah, just because someone chastises us for saying Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays, please don't come to me and say, you know, I'm suffering for Christ. No, suffering for Christ is something that's going on in our world right now we don't even talk about. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and turn our Bibles to Matthew chapter 22. We need to get going because we're going to run out of time, Steve.
It's time well spent.
Well, it is. It is. Matthew chapter 22. I'm going to be reading with verse 34 going down through 40. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law of the prophets hang on these two commandments. Well, evidently there is some Jesus, because that's in red. Anything in red, you're supposed to, you know.
I heard a guy say one time as he was growing up, he thought the words of Jesus were red in his Bible, and the things that Satan said were in black. That would make you come up with some weird interpretations of
it would, but you know, it's not like this question that you've proposed for what is important is not been a question that's been around for a long time. In fact, you know, even I've been preaching a series of lessons in January about what is important as far as it relates to what our life looks like, or what is important that we put all of our effort and meaning in. The question of importance, we don't treat it like it's any big deal, but if you watch someone's life, I can pretty much tell you what's important to them.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you another thing you can do, look at your checkbook.
Exactly.
Susie and I own half of Kroger's. Because when we go through the checks at the end of, you know, when we're doing
Kroger's
income tax, Kroger's, yeah. Do we not go anywhere and write a check unless it's Kroger's?
Yeah.
But hey, everything's so good, we keep coming back. So.
Well, man's got to eat.
Yeah. Sure
man's got to eat, but you know.
So what's the one thing he says in that you just read? What's the one thing that he says is of great importance?
Well, the greatest commandment. The question was greatest commandment, and Jesus first replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind." This is the first.
Did you notice he said he asked this question because he wanted to test him?
Yeah.
He thought he knew the answer, and Jesus was going to get it wrong. But did he turn the tables on him?
No. He, in essence, took what anyone who would have studied the Bible, I mean, you can pick out little things here and there, like honor your father and mother. Number one commandment, according to when I was 10 years old from my dad, you know, but no, I'm just kidding. But no, he takes all of the commandments. What do they mean? They mean love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, at one other
Isn't that
place.
amazing? Like if you went into a class in college, you took a chemistry class or biology class, and you said, "No, we're going to study one page here in this book." That's all you got to know, because if you follow that one commandment, that one idea, if you follow that in your everyday life, you've got everything else covered. Before we go, I want to tell you one very short story. He says when this guy came up to him, he was trying to make Jesus look bad. It says, Matthew writes that he was testing him to see what he was going to say. And that's when Jesus said, well, there are two commandments, basically. You're supposed to love God with all your heart, strength, soul, and mind, and you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. I have a dear, dear friend who's a Roman Catholic, and he and I, and well, until I got sick a couple of years ago, he and I ran together twice a week. And we were running one day, and we were talking about, how do you live your life? What do you do when you live your life? And Tom said, well, the way I got it figured, you love God with all your heart, strength, soul, and mind, and be nice to everybody. And I almost stopped dead in my tracks because I thought, how beautiful is that? He summarized the summary.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be nice. Just think if you got up every morning and said, I'm going to be nice to people today. It should be a different world.
Yeah, if we treated everyone the kindness that we would want to be treated, wow.
The word is reciprocal, I think.
Yeah.
You do that to me, I do that to you.
And we do it to everyone we come in contact with. It would change the narrative of the world that we live in, because right now it's a mess.
Oh my goodness.
And the sad part about it is, and I don't mean this, folks, I do not mean this harshly, but we as followers of Jesus Christ are just as culpable in some of this rhetoric that's going on as anyone else, because we have the tendency to every now and then start preaching to people, and we don't preach in love, we preach in judgment. And I forget if it's James or Peter that says that you can't judge and love at the same time.
I'm trying to think in my skull here what was the source of this quote. I can't remember who said it, but somebody the first time said, preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
Yes.
Isn't that beautiful?
It is. And if we would just lead by example, going back all the way to John chapter 13, Jesus said, if you want to change the world, love it. Love like I've loved.
Mm-hmm.
Because how did Jesus change the world?
Well, there were a whole lot of people around Jesus who were saying that guy's different.
Yeah.
That guy's different than the rest of us.
Yeah. And, oh man.
And we ought to try to do the same thing.
Well, that's about all we're going to get this week, buddy.
Yeah, if you're going through your life and you've been a Christian for 30 years and nobody knows it, you're probably not doing that love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. It's hard. I'm not going to pretend like loving someone who really ticks you off is not one of the easiest things you're going to do.
Let's let marriage out of this, okay?
Oh, you stay in trouble all the time.
Well, I know she loves me because she wouldn't have fooled around with that for 52 years.
Yeah.
She told a couple people one time I would never divorce him. I might shoot him a couple times, but I would never. I've never wanted to divorce him. It always involved a rifle or a handgun.
Oh, well,
Not that I wouldn't deserve something like that.
Yeah, it's not like I haven't, maybe had that thing coming.
So the first great commandment is to love God and love others as you would love yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. So the target, if I can just kind of summarize here, the target that we've looked at for the past few weeks is this. What if God were shooting at a bullseye? What would his target be? And we have studied justice and mercy and faithfulness and service. We've studied death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, which Paul says that's of first importance. You can't misunderstand that. 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 5. And loving God with all your heart. Now that one, obviously, that's That's progress. That's a work of progress is happening in their life. You don't get up one morning and say, I'm going to become a Christian, and then the next day you're loving God with all your heart and soul and mind. That's not the way that works.
No.
And so the last passage we're going to look at, if you want to read it.
No, we've run out of time.
Ephesians 5:15 through 17, if you'd like to look at it.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Next week, we will do that, and we'll summarize everything.
We can do a whole class on Ephesians 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
If you can find Ephesians. It's in the New Testament.
It's in the New Testament, yeah. Somewhere between 1 Corinthians and Revelation.
No, it's between Nehemiah and...
Genesis and Revelation.
It's between Nehemiah and 2nd Maccabees.
The maps. Between Matthew and the maps. Well,
there's a concordance back there too.
Oh, that's right. Forgot all about that.
How in the world do people not tune into this show and be just rewarded with absolute brilliant ideas from the Bible? I don't know how they would miss that. I miss it.
I'll let him hang his own self on that one. Well, on behalf of Steve and I, we thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we look forward to spending some time again with you next week. And God bless and have a great week. Keep your smile up.